Both his first love and I fell into the water at the same time. George left me and chose to save his first love after I crawled ashore with my injured leg. I asked him for a divorce. George looked confused. Regina can't swim. I went to save her. Why are you making such a big deal out of it? Our year-old son looked at me coldly too. Mom, you're fine. Why are you being so petty? I slapped George across the face, then pinched my son's cheek with a smear. Yes, I am that petty. George's head jerked to the side from the slap. When he turned back, his lips twitched as he tried to suppress his anger. Stacy, can't you calm down? Henry, being just a child, burst into tears, shouting and struggling. No wonder Dad saved Aunt Regina instead of you. You're just a vicious woman. You deserve to fall into the water. I dragged my aching leg and gave him a smack on his bottom. Yes, I'm a vicious woman. Why don't you go live with Regina and let her be your mother? Regina stepped forward and pushed me aside, pulling Henry into her arms protectively out of everyone's sight but mine. She gave me a provocative smile. Stacy, hek, just a child. He didn't mean what he said. How could you hit him? Henry, still clinging to Regina, yelled hysterically. I wasn't saying it out of anger. I don't want her to be my mom. She's dumb. She can't ride horses, can't play golf. She's nothing like Aunt Regina. Dad doesn't like her and neither do I. Before Henry could spill any more of his true feelings, George sternly interrupted. Henry, stop making a scene with that. He positioned himself in front of the two, as if guarding them. A crying child, a gentle mother, a tall father. Ha, what a picture-perfect family of three, and Regina still putting on her act. This boy is so sweet and sensible. If it were me, I couldn't bear to raise my hand against him. You're such a heartless mother. I curled my lips into a smile, glaring at her coldly. Say one more word, and I'll make sure the next slap lands on your face. I watched as her smile froze. Instantly, I let out a scoff. Leaving that scumbag and his mistress and that piece of barbecued pork, I turned and walked away. The next day, I handed George the divorce papers. He frowned, pushing his gold-rimmed glasses up his nose, looking utterly exhausted. This has gone too far. You won't be able to take it back. I'm not joking. Sign it. The assets will be divided according to the prenup as for Henry. Custody will be yours. Henry had inherited George's coldness and cruelty, and his lack of love for me. Rather than forcing him to stay with me, it would be better for him to live with George. George put the papers down, his cold face filled with confusion. All this just because of yesterday. Regina can't swim. I went to save her. What's the big deal? You were fine. Did it really have to lead to divorce? He spoke righteously, as if since I hadn't died in the water he was in the right. Yesterday George and I took Henry to the beach. Halfway through, George left for a while. In that short time he brought Regina over. He claimed they had run into each other on the way, and since she was all alone, he invited her to join us. Seeing my sour expression, Henry, who usually clung only to me, gleefully ran into Reina's arms. Aunt Regina, it's only been a day, but I missed you so much. It was at that moment that I realized George had been in contact with Regina all along. Not only that, he had taken Henry to see her more than once. When I looked at George, his face was grim as he hastily explained, I ran into Regina a few times when I was picking Henry up from school. His flimsy excuse made my heart sink. Later, a huge wave crashed onto the beach. Regina and I were swept into the water together. The tide wasn't rising and the wave wasn't strong enough to drag anyone under. It felt like a test that forced George to choose between me and Regina. He forgot that I was his wife, forgot that my leg was injured from saving him once before. Without hesitation, he chose to save Regina. So now he asks if it's really necessary. Of course it is. They can choose not to love me, but I can't choose not to love myself. I looked him straight in the eye and replied word by word, what if I hadn't been okay? What if I hadn't been able to crawl out of the water with my bad leg? George, the only reason I'm standing here asking for a divorce is because I'm still alive. George opened his mouth and his words came out before he thought. But you are still alive. He stopped mid-sentence, realizing his mistake, awkwardly shifting his gaze away. He took a deep breath. His tone was outwardly calming, but his words carried a threat. If you leave me without parents Or family, where do you think you'll go? I smiled, pushing the papers toward him again. That's none of your concern. Sign it and consider it repayment for saving your life. George was a proud man. He hated it when I used my life-saving deed to guilt him, and he was certain I wouldn't leave him and abandon our son. He thought I was just throwing a tantrum, but when I brought up that life-saving moment his face darkened and he coldly replied, all you ever talk about is saving my life. Fine, let's divorce, but once we're done, don't think I'll agree to get back together so easily. Take this time to reflect on your actions. In the end, I got what I wanted, a divorce certificate. I returned to the house we had lived in for years to pack my things. The house was big and there were plenty of expensive and delicate items, but the only things that truly belonged to me were just a few scattered bits and pieces. I looked around at all the large and small objects, some expensive, some exquisite. In the end, I went up to the attic and took out the one thing that was mine alone, my easel. I strapped it to my back and left the villa. As I reached the gate, I saw Henry standing on the second-floor balcony, his lips pressed together in a tight line, his little face cold as ice. He stood there silently, watching me. Maybe he hoped I would go over to him just like before, hug him, kiss him, apologize to him. I stopped and glanced back at him, then with a sigh I softly told him, eat well, sleep well, and take good care of yourself. Mommy won't be around to take care of you anymore. Henry's eyes reddened as he turned his head with a cold snort. If you're leaving, then go. Aunt Regina will take care of me anyway. I don't need you. I paused for a moment but said nothing more. With the setting sun behind me, I walked away with my easel. Henry wasn't always like this. Before Regina came back, he was sweet and caring when other kids made fun of him because I couldn't ride horses or play golf. He would always defend me with a serious face. So what if she can't as my mom? All she needs to do is love me enough. But after Regina returned from abroad and after George took him to meet her a few times, it was as if Henry had turned into someone else. The son who once only loved me began to resent me for not coming from a wealthy family, and even stopped letting me pick him up from kindergarten. When his friends came over to our house, he told me to stay out or not come home at all, even on the day of my parents' memorial. When I cried, he coldly scolded me for being ungraceful. He was so young, there was still time to fix everything. The more I thought, the more resolute I became. I leaned down and hugged Henry gently, speaking softly. Henry, come with Mommy, okay? Mommy will renegotiate with Daddy about custody. I could feel Henry's defenses weakening. He even snuggled a little closer to me, as if the sweet, loving Henry the first knew had returned. He stayed in my arms for a long time before finally mumbling, "Don't bother. You'll never get custody of me." I stroked his head, my voice firm. "Mommy will trade everything I got in the divorce for you." Henry pushed me away, his reddened eyes meeting mine. In his innocent voice, he said the cruelest words. "With Dad, I have a nanny to take care of me, a luxury car to ride in, and I go to the best schools. But with you, you can't give me any of that. Besides, Dad won't let you have me. You can't leave this house without me." I went silent for a moment, my throat tight, the words hard to get out. "Mommy will try to talk to your daddy." Henry's face was stern as he coldly cut off my futile attempt. "Mom, I'm not going with you. And you don't belong here. When Sabrina came back, you should have stepped aside. Just leave. Don't come back. I don't want to see you anymore. From now on, Aunt Regina will be my mom." I'd heard these words before, but they still hurt. Tears streamed down my face as I stared blankly at the child I carried for 10 months. He turned his head away, his small finger pointing at the door. "Go out. I don't want to see you again." I didn't move. I just kept looking at him. The next moment, he threw a cup at my feet. With a loud bang, the flying shards cut into my ankle, and a thin line of blood appeared. As the sharp pain shot through my ankle, I suddenly felt that my regret upon entering was like a joke. Henry wasn't influenced by George. He was cold-blooded by nature and didn't like me. I took 2 steps back and turned to leave his room. As I stepped out, I couldn't help but turn back and say, "Henry, once I leave, I really won't come back." In response, I heard another cup shatter. I wiped my tears and walked away without looking back. As I exited, I ran into the housekeeper. She looked at me with concern, then glanced at Henry's room. "Did Henry make you angry again?" I shook my head and quietly told her. "It was me who made him angry. And don't bring up his matters to me anymore. He doesn't want to see me." After saying that, I left quickly, leaving the housekeeper behind. From a distance, I vaguely heard her say, "How could this child not love you? He calls your name even in his dreams." I wiped away the fresh tears and shook my head. How could that be? He had repeatedly told me that he didn't need me. On the way back, I looked at the familiar streets along the way. Suddenly, the city felt terrifyingly unfamiliar. My phone kept vibrating with calls from unknown numbers. When I answered, it was George's voice. "Stacy, Henry is sick. Why didn't you stay to be with him?" I scoffed, hatred rising in my chest. "George, everything is going as you wished. Henry doesn't want me as his mother anymore. You must be feeling pretty smug right now." George hurriedly tried to explain, his voice anxious. "I didn't mean it that way. I just wanted him to not dislike Regina." I couldn't contain my emotions anymore and shouted. "So you chose to make him hate me, is that it?" "Stacy, that wasn't my intention. I wanted Henry to accept Regina so you wouldn't resist her so much." I interrupted him with a cold laugh. "George, tell me, why should I accept Regina? The woman who intruded on my marriage." George fell silent for a long time, long enough for me to lose the desire to argue with him. I hung up the phone. Staring out at the passing trees, I suddenly didn't want to stay in the city anymore. I clutched my phone tightly and spoke to the driver in the front seat. "Take me to. That's my parents' hometown. I missed them." I submitted my resignation, went back to the hotel to pack my things, and headed to Beijing. I admit I am a coward. I'm afraid of not being resolute, of compromising for Henry in that hopeless abyss. After all, in my youth, I gave up painting for a secret crush. I hadn't picked up a brush for over 10 years. Occasionally, when I felt nostalgic, would take out my sketchpad and hesitate about starting over. But each time, I lost to the busyness of work and Henry's repeated calls of "Mom." Now that I'm divorced, those shackles no longer exist. I feel like I've been reborn. Maybe I should thank Henry. If he were a little more attached, I might still be struggling in that abyss. But everything now is the best arrangement. I will take my sketchpad and slowly find the youthful self I once had. And asked softly, "Do you want to stay with me?" Henry took a small sip of water and shook his head with a stiff expression. "No, Dad forced me to come." I lowered my head with a bitter smile, then looked at George mockingly. "Don't use the kid as an excuse." George's face darkened and his voice grew cold. "Henry, speak properly." I couldn't stand watching him scold the child anymore, so I interrupted with a sneer. "Could you stop putting on a show in front of me? And one more thing, we're divorced. You shouldn't be bothering me anymore. If Henry wants to come during the holidays, have someone bring him over. As for you, I don't think we have any reason to meet again." George opened his mouth as if to say something, but his face suddenly fell. "Stacy, I don't understand. I didn't cheat on you with Regina. We were just friends. I swear what happened that day won't happen again. From now on I'll put you first in everything." "Why did you still divorce me? You used to love me so much. You even hurt your leg saving me. What happened to you?" I exhaled slowly and turned to face him. "Did you really marry me because you loved me? If you truly loved me, why did you save Regina first when we both fell into the water? Why did you take Henry to play with her? Tell me to accept her." "George, don't tarnish the word love. It's disgusting." Seeing George's face turn pale, I couldn't help but pour out all my years of frustration. "George, the first did love you when I was young, but when I risked my life to save you from that car accident, I wasn't Doing it to make you feel grateful. I would have done the same for a stranger, but what did you do? You didn't love me yet you stayed out of guilt pretending to care for me. Did you think you were making it up to me? Do you still think you're the victim here? My parents always taught me to be kind, but when I found out you pursued me and married me out of guilt, I deeply regretted saving you that day. George stared at me stunned, his eyes red. No, I loved you too. I just realized it too late. I took a deep breath and pointed to the door. That's not my problem anymore. Please don't bother me again. Henry was the first to walk out. Before he left, he gave me a long look. I felt a pain in my heart and called out to him, Henry, do you want to stay with me for a few days? That look was full of attachment, but he still firmly rejected me. No, I don't stay in small houses. His cold words made me wonder if the attachment I saw in his eyes had been an illusion. After they left, I leaned against the door sighing deeply with mixed emotions. If Henry had stayed, I would have inevitably remained entangled with George. If not for his repeated cruelty, I would have been trapped forever. Later, I moved a few more times, but George always managed to find me. Given his wealth and resources, my whereabouts were likely transparent to him. Once I realized this, I stopped obsessing over moving. Instead, I chose to ignore him. After dropping Henry off, George shamelessly lingered around me. He often followed me when I went for walks, reminiscing about the past as if he were alone. Stacy, when we were kids, we often took walks like this. It feels just like back then when I was invited to sketch outdoors. He would drive behind me, trailing along. I would set up my easel and paint, while he watched silently from the side. After I finished, as usual, he'd bring up childhood memories. When you came to my house, you were always carrying a sketchbook, just like now. I used to think you loved painting, but I never saw you paint back then. I didn't expect you to start again after all these years. One of my friends from the sketching group smiled and asked me, Stacy, is that your boyfriend? I shook my head and said, seriously, no, he's my ex-husband. We're divorced. He's just pastoring me. Then I explained the story behind our divorce. After hearing it, they were all furious on my behalf. When George followed me once again, began to a sketching session. They teamed up to keep him away from me. Their dislike for him was written all over their faces. I was touched, but I told them there was no need for that. He'd be leaving soon. There's no need to act like this. Besides, I've already moved on. I was right. George did leave quickly, prompted by work affairs. Before he left, he looked at me intently and made a promise. I'll come find you once I'm done. I love you. I smiled, but said nothing. No matter how many times he came, I wasn't going back. His love coming so late was like expired fermented milk. So fell it made me sick. Later, just as he said, he came back a few times, bringing Henry with him. He even tried to use Henry to persuade me to reconcile with him. Can you bear to let Henry grow up in a single-parent household? You love him so much, why not give him the best? But unfortunately for him, he had done such a good job brainwashing Henry. Henry raised his eyelids and said coldly, Dad, you can marry Aunt Regina or find someone else to be my mom. When George glared at Henry, the first couldn't help but laugh. Then I closed the door, leaving them outside. After Henry ruined his plans a few more times, George stopped bringing him along. He started traveling back and forth between the two cities alone. He kept repeating his apologies, his declarations of love. I remained unmoved, sometimes even laughing at him. Over time, his visits became less frequent. By the 5th year, he stopped coming altogether. For some reason, maybe he got tired of it, but it had nothing to do with me. By then, I had become a well-known oil painter in the country and had started dating my former neighbor, and when I decided to marry that neighbor, Henry surprisingly came to see me. He was 12 by then, already like a little adult. He handed me a bouquet of red roses, his gaze deep and dark. Mom, I wish you happiness in the future. Then he shoved the flowers into my arms and turned to leave without looking back. As I watched him go, I grabbed the hand of the man beside me, feeling a little stunned. It's been so long. He seems to have grown up a lot. The man wrapped his arm around my waist and patted my hand reassuringly. Yes, time flies. Later, on my wedding day, I saw Henry again. I had invited him the evening before the wedding. He didn't refuse, nor did he accept. I thought he wouldn't come, but that day he showed up in a little black suit, escorting me in my white wedding gown step by step toward the groom on the stage. After placing my hand in the groom's, Henry leaned toward the groom's ear and whispered, a threat hurt my mom, and you won't have a good ending. The last one is already lying in the hospital. You'd better watch yourself. The groom hurriedly shook his head, promising, I will love her forever, protect her, I swear on my life. I turned to look at Henry. His face was stern, eyes red, as he fiercely warned others not to hurt me. I couldn't help but shed tears. Maybe Henry didn't really hate me back then. After all, when he was 5, he truly loved me. Perhaps his love was about letting go